The arrival. Nova Sterling couldn't help but smirk as the quantum restraints hummed around her wrists. The Helios X prison transport ship descended through the artificial atmosphere of the facility, its crystalline walls gleaming with an otherworldly purple sheen. She was about to become the first human ever imprisoned in what the Galactic Confederation called their ultimate detention facility. Prisoner 11-38, rumbled Warden Xylith, there form a shifting mass of iridescent scales and multiple arms. You stand accused of infiltrating 12 high-security Confederation facilities and stealing classified quantum technology. Your sentence, life imprisonment. Just 12. Nova raised an eyebrow. Your records are a bit outdated, Warden. It was 15 facilities, actually. The guard beside her, a towering insectoid named Raz-TK, clicked their mandibles in annoyance. Silence, primitive. Your species barely understands interstellar travel. You should show more respect. Nova simply smiled, taking in every detail of the massive prison complex as they descended. The quantum-reinforced walls, the neural dampening fields, the probability manipulation grids, it was all exactly as she'd expected. After all, she hadn't gotten caught by accident. The transport dock materialized around them as they passed through several layers of quantum shields. Nova noticed how each layer created unique interference patterns in the air, information she carefully filed away for later use. They led her through a series of increasingly secure checkpoints, each featuring more exotic containment technology than the last. Your cell has been specially designed for a being of your limited capabilities, Warden Xylith explained, their tone dripping with condescension. We've even included basic amenities suitable for primitive life forms. The cell was indeed basic by the prison standards, a simple cube with quantum-locked walls and a force field entrance. Nova recognized the technology immediately. It was similar to what she'd encountered in the Confederation's research facility on Proxima 7. Not that she'd mentioned that particular break-in, since it wasn't in her official record. How thoughtful, Nova said, stepping into the cell. Though I have to ask, did you really install a mechanical lock as backup for the quantum field generator? How charmingly retro. The warden's scales shifted in what might have been amusement. The mechanical systems are merely a redundancy, human. This facility has contained beings that can manipulate reality itself. Your primitive lock-picking skills won't help you here. Nova sat cross-legged on the simple bed platform, her expression neutral. Of course not, Warden. I wouldn't dream of trying to escape. She paused, then added with a slight smile, though I do have one small request, would it be possible to get some art supplies? I find creating helps pass the time. Raz-TK laughed, their mandibles clicking rapidly. The human wants to draw pictures. Perhaps we should provide stone tablets and charcoal as well. Grant the request, Warden Xylith said suddenly, surprising the guard. Let the primitive entertain herself. It will make monitoring her psychological state easier. As they walked away, Nova could hear Raz-TK protesting the decision. She waited until they were out of sight before allowing herself a genuine smile. The first piece was in place. They'd given her exactly what she'd asked for, never wondering why an expert in quantum mechanics would request something so seemingly primitive. Over the next few days, Nova established her routine. She exercised regularly, ate her meals without complaint, and spent hours creating what appeared to be simple artwork with the basic supplies they'd provided. The guards watched her with a mixture of amusement and pity, never noticing how each piece she created was shaped to precise mathematical specifications. During her daily observation period, Nova chatted pleasantly with her neighboring inmates, a crystalline being named Vishare and a sentient quantum probability cloud called Zixius. The guards found her attempts at communication entertaining, not realizing she was learning crucial details about the prison's quantum field architecture. The human adapts well to captivity, she overheard Raz-TK reporting to the warden. Though she spends an unusual amount of time talking to the walls. Primitive coping mechanism, Warden Xylith dismissed. Their species seeks pattern recognition even where none exists. Nova suppressed a grin as she continued working on her latest, art project, a precise geometric pattern that would soon play a crucial role in her escape plan. The aliens' greatest mistake wasn't imprisoning her, it was assuming that humanity's greatest strength was their technology. They'd never considered that their greatest advantage might be their ability to make others underestimate them. Seeds of Deception. By her second week in Helios X, Nova had become something of a curiosity among the guards. Her cell walls were covered in intricate geometric patterns, each one seemingly more complex than the last. She spent hours humming quietly while working on her art, occasionally asking the walls questions as if expecting them to answer. "The human's mental state concerns me," Raztike reported during the morning briefing. Yesterday she spent 3 hours explaining Earth's quantum mechanics theories to her drinking cup. Warden Xylitha's scales rippled with amusement. Let her talk to inanimate objects. Better that than attempting something foolish like the Void Walkers in Section 7. Nova smiled to herself as she overheard their conversation. The quantum resonance patterns she'd carefully drawn across her cell walls were already beginning to synchronize with the prison's security frequencies. Each artistic design served as a passive scanner, mapping the facility's quantum field architecture in real time. "Tell me, Vishare," Nova called to her crystalline neighbor, "how do the quantum dampeners affect your natural resonance?" The crystalline being's facets shifted thoughtfully. "They create a counterfrequency that prevents my natural harmonics from functioning." "Quite ingenious, actually." "Fascinating," Nova replied, adding another seemingly random pattern to her wall. In reality, she was documenting the exact counterfrequency Vishare had just described. "And Zixius, does your probability cloud experience similar effects?" The quantum being's voice rippled through possible frequencies. "The dampeners force my quantum states to remain fixed, preventing probability manipulation." Each conversation revealed another piece of the puzzle. The guards found her scientific curiosity amusing, a primitive trying to understand technology far beyond her comprehension. They never noticed how each answer helped her map the prison's weaknesses. During exercise periods, Nova performed what appeared to be simple calisthenics. In reality, each movement was precisely timed to the quantum field fluctuations, helping her understand the rhythm of the prison's security systems. She'd occasionally, accidentally, bump into the quantum-locked walls, each touch providing valuable data about their resonance patterns. "Your species is surprisingly adaptable," Warden Xylith observed during an inspection. "Most new prisoners spend weeks fighting against their confinement." Nova shrugged, working on a new wall pattern. "Why fight what you can't change? Besides, I'm learning so much about quantum mechanics from our conversations. Did you know that human scientists once theorized about quantum entanglement using a thought experiment about a cat?" The warden's scales shifted in what might have been confusion. "Your species understood quantum principles before achieving space flight." "Oh, we understand all sorts of things," Nova replied cryptically, adding another precise geometric shape to her collection. "We just express them differently sometimes." As the days passed, Nova's cell began to look less like a prison and more like an abstract art gallery. The guards joked about human primitives and their need to mark their territory, never realizing that each mark was part of a larger plan. She spent time learning about her fellow inmates, not just their containment methods, but their stories. The Void Walkers who could step between dimensions, the energy weavers who could manipulate quantum fields, the probability shapers who could alter reality itself. Each one contained by increasingly sophisticated technology. "Your interest in other prisoners is unusual," Raztike noted during a routine check. "Most species tend to isolate themselves." Nova smiled, adding the finishing touches to her latest wall pattern. "Humans are social creatures. We like to understand our neighbors. Speaking of which, how's your crystalline exoskeleton doing with the recent quantum field adjustments?" The guard's mandibles clicked in surprise at her observation. "You noticed the adjustments?" Just a lucky guess, Nova said innocently, turning back to her art. She didn't mention that she'd detected the subtle changes in the quantum field harmonics 3 days ago and had already adjusted her plans accordingly. In the privacy of her cell, Nova continued her work. Each artwork, each conversation, each seemingly random movement was another thread in her web of preparation. The prison's quantum security systems were incredibly sophisticated, but they all shared one crucial weakness: they were designed to prevent escape attempts, not to recognize when everyday actions were slowly undermining their very foundations. As she prepared for sleep that night, Nova heard Warden Xylith discussing her case with a superior. The human remains docile and cooperative. Perhaps their species is finally learning their place in the galaxy. Nova smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of Phase 2, when her primitive artwork would reveal its true purpose. The seeds of deception had been carefully planted, soon it would be time for them to bloom. The art of misdirection. The quantum alert systems in Helios X registered nothing unusual the morning Nova began Phase 2 of her escape plan. Why would they? All their sensors detected was a human prisoner continuing her daily routine of exercise, conversation, and artistic activities. Fascinating design, Warden Xylith commented during morning inspection, their scales shifting as they studied Nova's latest wall pattern. Though I notice you've started incorporating our quantum formulae into your artwork. Nova looked up from her work with carefully crafted confusion. Oh, is that what those symbols are? I've just been copying the pretty patterns I see in the force field's energy fluctuations. They remind me of Earth's sacred geometry. The warden's form rippled with amusement. Primitive species often mistake advanced science for mystical significance. They moved on, never noticing how Nova's patterns had begun subtly influencing the quantum field harmonics throughout her cell block. During exercise period, Nova started teaching her fellow inmates what she claimed were traditional Earth meditation techniques. In reality, each movement pattern helped synchronize their various energy signatures with her growing network of quantum resonators. The humans' activities are spreading, Raztike reported during the afternoon shift change. Now even the Void Walkers are participating in her primitive rituals. Let them play their games, another guard chittered. Better than dealing with escape attempts. Nova suppressed a smile as she led another meditation session. Each participant unknowingly contributed their unique quantum signatures to her plan. The Void Walker's dimensional energies, the Energy Weaver's field manipulations, even the Probability Shaper's reality-altering frequencies, all became part of her growing symphony of quantum chaos. Tell me, Zixius, Nova called to her quantum probability neighbor, how does it feel when you try to shift probabilities now? Any different since joining our morning sessions? The quantum being's voice rippled with excitement. The dampening fields feel less restrictive. Your Earth techniques are surprisingly effective. Of course they were. Nova had spent weeks calibrating her artwork to gradually weaken the quantum dampeners through precisely timed resonance patterns. Each meditation session further destabilized the prison's security systems, but so slowly and subtly that the automated diagnostics registered nothing amiss. Even the conscious quantum walls had begun responding to her influence. They vibrated almost imperceptibly when she spoke to them, their programmed responses slowly shifting from containment to cooperation. Nova had learned early in her career that the most sophisticated security systems often had the simplest weaknesses. They never expected kindness as a method of infiltration. The human's influence concerns me, one of the senior guards, a plasma-based being named Torch 9, mentioned to Warden Xylith. The prisoners in her block seem different. The warden's scales rippled dismissively. Different how? They're more peaceful, more cooperative. Her primitive social behaviors are making our job easier. Nova continued her work, each day adding new elements to her quantum resonance network. The prison's own security systems began to adapt, adjusting their frequencies to match what they perceived as normal background quantum noise. Like a conductor leading an orchestra, Nova carefully brought each element into harmony with her master plan. You know what's funny about quantum mechanics? She asked Vishare one evening. Sometimes the act of observation can change the outcome of an experiment. The crystalline being's facets shifted curiously. How is that relevant to your Earth art? Oh, it probably isn't, Nova replied, adding another precise pattern to her walls. Just something I find interesting. Like how quantum entanglement can theoretically connect particles across any distance. She didn't mention that she'd spent weeks creating a vast network of entangled quantum particles throughout the prison, disguised as decorative patterns. Each artwork, each meditation session, each friendly conversation with the walls had contributed to her web of quantum manipulation. As lights out approached, Nova surveyed her work with satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring the final phase of her plan. The guards would perform their routine inspection, never realizing that every security system in Helios X had been subtly altered, every quantum field precisely tuned to her specifications. Sweet dreams, she called out to the guards as they passed. Tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. The human becomes more peculiar, Raz-TK muttered to their colleague. Speaking of tomorrow as if it holds any surprises in a maximum security quantum prison. Nova lay back on her bed, feeling the quantum energies pulsing through her cell in perfect harmony with her heartbeat. They had built the most sophisticated prison in the galaxy, filled it with the most advanced technology imaginable, and staffed it with the most vigilant guards. But they had forgotten one crucial detail: sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective. Breaking point. The morning of Nova's escape began like any other in Helios X. The quantum fields hummed their usual frequencies, the guards performed their standard checks, and the prisoners went about their scheduled routines. No one noticed that the geometric patterns covering Nova's cell walls had begun to pulse with an almost imperceptible rhythm. Inspection time, human, Raz-TK announced, mandibles clicking as they approached her cell. Step away from the force field. Nova smiled, sitting cross-legged in the center of her cell surrounded by her artwork. Of course, though I'd love your opinion on my latest piece. I call it, Quantum Resonance in D minor. The guard's compound eyes studied the intricate pattern she'd just completed. More of your primitive drawings. What's this one supposed to be? Oh, just a visualization of how quantum fields interact when they reach harmonic convergence, Nova replied truthfully. Watch this. She touched one finger to the central pattern. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every quantum resonator she'd created over the past weeks activated simultaneously, their frequencies amplifying each other in a cascading wave of energy. Warning klaxons blared as the prison's quantum dampening fields began to fluctuate wildly. Nova's artwork, her carefully disguised network of quantum manipulators, had begun its work. What's happening? Warden Xylith materialized outside her cell, their scales shifting in patterns of alarm. All security systems are reporting quantum field instabilities. Nova stood slowly, watching as her fellow inmates' containment fields began to flicker. Interesting fact about quantum mechanics, Warden. When enough particles become entangled, they can create some fascinating chain reactions. The prison's conscious quantum walls had started vibrating in harmony with Nova's resonance patterns. Weeks of friendly conversations had done what no amount of force could have achieved, they recognized her as something other than a threat. Stop this immediately. Raz-TK aimed their quantum stun baton at her, but the weapon only sparked uselessly. Nova's artwork had already destabilized its power source. You know what humans are really good at? Nova asked conversationally as she stepped through her now failing force field. Pattern recognition. And your security systems have some fascinating patterns. Chaos erupted throughout the facility. The Void Walkers, their dimensional dampeners compromised by Nova's meditation sessions, began shifting between realities. The Energy Weavers, their powers enhanced by the quantum resonance, started manipulating the prison's force fields. Impossible. Warden Xylitha's form writhed in disbelief. You're a primitive. You couldn't possibly understand our quantum technology. Nova laughed as she walked calmly down the corridor, the conscious walls rippling in her wake. Understanding something and making it work are two different things, Warden. Sometimes you don't need to know why a key fits a lock, you just need to know how to turn it. The prison's quantum core began to overload as Nova's resonance patterns reached critical harmonization. Security systems crashed as they received conflicting quantum signals from her network of entangled particles. Fascinating design, Nova commented, examining a failing quantum field generator. Though you might want to add some redundancies for harmonic feedback loops. They're a real weakness in systems like this. Guards rushed to intercept her, but their weapons had all been rendered useless by the quantum chaos. The meditation sessions had done more than just weaken the dampening fields, they had created a web of quantum interference that now protected Nova and her fellow inmates. The human is heading for the quantum drive core, someone shouted over the facility's comm system. The human, Nova called back, has a name. And a plan. Would you like to see what happens when you introduce a quantum resonance cascade to a probability manipulation grid? She didn't wait for an answer. The final piece of her artwork, a small pattern she'd drawn that morning, began to pulse with increasing intensity. The quantum drive core's containment fields started to fluctuate, creating ripples in the fabric of spacetime itself. You'll destroy the entire facility. Warden Xylatha's voice echoed through multiple quantum frequencies. Nova reached the drive core chamber, her quantum resonance network now at full power. Destroy. No. Transform. Absolutely. There's a difference between breaking something and changing its fundamental nature. Legacy of freedom. The quantum drive core of Helios X pulsed with blinding energy as Nova's resonance patterns reached their crescendo. The walls of reality itself seemed to bend and flex as probability waves collapsed in new and impossible ways. One last physics lesson, Nova announced to the gathering of guards and prison officials. When you introduce the right frequency to a quantum system, you don't need to break it. You just need to convince it to exist in a slightly different state. Her network of quantum resonators, disguised as simple artwork, had transformed the entire prison into a massive quantum tunnel. The conscious walls, now fully aligned with her frequencies, began to reshape themselves, creating pathways where none had existed before. Containment breach in all sectors. A guard's voice crackled over the failing comm system. The quantum fields they're singing. Nova smiled as the harmonic patterns she'd spent weeks establishing reached perfect synchronization. That's the thing about quantum mechanics, sometimes the most elegant solution isn't about force or complexity. Sometimes it's just about finding the right rhythm. Warden Xylath materialized one final time, their form flickering through multiple quantum states. What have you done to my prison? I didn't do anything to your prison, Nova replied, watching as reality rippled around them. I just helped it realize its full potential. Those conscious quantum walls you installed. Turns out they're excellent conversation partners once you take the time to get to know them. The quantum drive core's energy began to coalesce, forming what appeared to be a gateway through spacetime itself. Nova's fellow inmates, their own unique quantum signatures now part of her grand symphony, found themselves drawn toward freedom. You humans, Raz-TK chittered in disbelief, their crystalline exoskeleton vibrating with the quantum harmonics. We thought you were primitives playing with forces you couldn't understand. Nova stepped toward the quantum gateway, her artwork glowing with otherworldly energy. Understanding isn't always necessary for mastery. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough comes from simply seeing patterns others miss. As she prepared to step through the gateway, Nova turned to address the assembled guards and officials one last time. You built the most advanced prison in the galaxy, filled it with technology beyond imagination, and assumed that made you invincible. But you forgot something crucial about humans, we don't need to understand the rules to change them. With a final pulse of quantum energy, Nova Sterling stepped through the gateway she'd created. Behind her, Helios X wasn't destroyed, it was transformed. The quantum fields she'd manipulated had permanently altered the facility's fundamental nature, turning the galaxy's most secure prison into a testament to human ingenuity. In the days that followed, the story of the human who escaped the inescapable prison spread across the galaxy. The Confederation's security experts spent months studying Nova's methods, but they could never quite replicate what she'd achieved. The quantum resonance patterns she'd created, disguised as primitive artwork, had somehow tapped into principles of quantum mechanics that their most advanced scientists had never considered. Helios X was eventually decommissioned, its quantum walls still humming with traces of Nova's harmonic frequencies. The facility became a research center, dedicated to studying the unexpected ways that supposedly primitive species could interact with advanced technology. The Confederation was forced to upgrade humanity's classification from primitive tool users to unpredictably innovative beings. New protocols were established for dealing with human prisoners, though no one could quite agree on what those protocols should be. As for Nova Sterling, her escape became legend. Some said she'd used the quantum gateway to travel to distant galaxies. Others claimed she'd simply returned to Earth, ready for her next impossible challenge. But all agreed on one thing: she'd proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their understanding, but their ability to see possibilities where others saw only walls. In the end, the galaxy's most advanced prison had been defeated not by force or superior technology, but by simple human creativity. Nova had shown that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't quantum mechanics or advanced alien technology, it was the human ability to imagine a different way. Years later, visitors to the former prison would still report hearing faint harmonics in the quantum fields, as if the walls themselves were humming a tune they'd learned from a human who'd taken the time to teach them how to sing.